Well, we are asking it to be referred to the Powers and Privileges Committee, which is a National Assembly committee, to look into the matter, because if it is true, because that is what the Powers and Privileges Committee, in terms of the Act, can do, is to summons witnesses to find out if this is true. What does the actual contract say when it was entered with the Secretary of Parliament, and then to find out, but who lied to whom, who brought whom under the impression that there will be no increase, that Mr. George, the Secretary of Parliament, who was then appointed in June, is actually willing to take a pay cut of 3 million rands, something that we questioned at the time. So that committee will be able to determine the truth in this.
And the Sunday Times, which carried the story yesterday, Sunday, says it's seen internal documents which prove that Mr. George was given this 4.4 million rand salary per annum. And it quotes this. He says, George signed Parliament's job offer at 2.6 million rand, but added next to his signature, read this: in line with the acceptance agreement signed on the 5th of May 2022, I accept the offer with the date change of starting unreservedly. It then says, I specifically record that the agreement between the executive authority and myself remains that the remuneration and or benefits will be reviewed on or before October 1st, 2022. When Parliament got behind his appointment, had you been made aware that there would be this review in this way?
No, not at all. At that particular point, it was first brought to Parliament, to the NA, if I remember correctly, on the 25th of May last year. It was then postponed. There was then discussions held between the Speaker and the Chief Whips, as well as leaders of the different political parties, where they were informed that no, it is fine, it will be the upper limit. So everyone was under the impression that that is the contract. Now, the contract that was presented to the Chief Whips, or that anyone had sight of, was a generic employment agreement. So at that point, everyone was under the impression that the salary, the upper limit, would be 2.6. And not that there would be almost a 70% increase within a few months.
And as you alluded to earlier, when Nosiviwe George took up the role of Secretary to Parliament, he wasn't doing badly. He had already had a job, a well-paying job, and if I understand correctly, he was expected to take a salary cut in order to serve in this role. Explain then to people who may not understand why someone who'd already come in at such a high rate should not be paid 4.4 million rand if Parliament can indeed find it.
Well, this is the thing. If the position was advertised for an expected salary of 4.4 million, there would have been many more applicants. But it was advertised at 2.6 million. The fact that the increase was sort of written into the contract was never made public. So it's a very problematic situation. If you advertise a position for that salary, upper limit, between 2.4 and 2.6, then people will apply who will be able or who are willing to do the job at that particular salary. So we already asked questions in May and later, and specifically when the resolution was passed in the House. We voted against it, of course. Who would take a 3 million pay cut? It doesn't make sense. Now we know what happened.
He's on a 5-year performance-based contract. Let's talk about performance then in the period since 2022. Has he been worth the money spent on him so far?
Well, you see, there you will have to do an assessment of that. But if I look back at previous secretaries to Parliament, barring the one that Parliament basically terminated, the previous secretary to Parliament was brilliant people. But they worked for the salary that was affordable for Parliament. We have to keep that in mind. We're working with the taxpayers' money. We have a Parliament that has been burned down. We have so many expenses, and now without proper information, consultation, just one person in the whole parliamentary setup is given a 70% rise to 4.4 million. That just doesn't make sense. If the executive authority, which would be the Speaker of the National Assembly and the chairperson of the NCOP, wanted to revise the salary structure, they should have done a proper analysis of all positions in Parliament, all the support administrative functions, and not only all of a sudden this one particular position.